Welcome to Silicon Valley Asian Business Talk.
Hello, everyone. This is Roger Chen from Center for Business Studies and Innovation in Asia Pacific, University of San Francisco. Vera, I want to welcome you to our interview program. And would you please briefly introduce yourself?
Thank you, Roger. It's a real pleasure to join you on this podcast. My name is Veera. I'm from Sustainable Living Lab. We're a group of companies that basically deliver services around sustainability, consulting, and also all the adjacent sort of activities in that space. We've been around as a business for 14 years. We started out headquartered in Singapore. Today, we have offices in Indonesia, India, and the US, and we operate in about 30 countries. We have a staff strength of about 80 people delivering services in this space.
Growing our business by focusing on a few customers.
It's very clear, actually. I look at your company's background and your growth journey, growth process was very, very impressive, kind of engaged also in different kind of programs, right? And so could you, my first question is, could you kind of very briefly, just share with us the very rough sequence of your different services that you add on as your company grow? Then I have other growth-related questions. So what are the rough sequence of adding different products and services to your portfolio?
Sure. So, like I said, the starting was the maker spaces, these physical spaces. We looked at maker programs. So essentially, when you're a maker space, you can activate a lot of different things, right? You could essentially be looking at, I want to support entrepreneurship and startup development, especially hardware startup development. You could say that, I want to basically offer prototyping services, actual laser cutting, 3D printing, machining services. We also basically looked at repair. In fact, repair is one of those really, really interesting programs for us. Is that what started out originally as a way to bring together community to tackle the idea of electronic waste in Singapore, over the last 10 years has led into what is possibly in Singapore the most effective active aging program for male seniors, right? So in Singapore, we have an aging population, right? And I'm sorry to digress a little bit, right? Because it brings home the story about why we need to keep an eye out for opportunity, right? So we did a repair program originally conceived to tackle the e-waste problem. Because we are looking at sustainability, we look at e-waste, and it was massive e-waste problem in Singapore. Like all affluent societies, people change their phones every 2 years, right? The landfills are just filling up, right? And there's so much waste out there, and to us it felt that was terrible. We'll do something about it, right? And the repair industry in Singapore, like in many affluent countries, had collapsed because the cost of labor was incredibly high.
Yes.
So we said, okay, and unlike the US, we did not have a latent DIY culture, right? In Southeast Asia at least, right? So the challenge was that, okay, let's try and figure out how we can get the skills and the tools in the hands of people so that they can repair their own devices. So it was a very noble, CSR-ish type of, non-profit endeavor. That was how it started, right? Now, what we realized is that people showing up for these things tended to be above 60 years old. And majority of them were elderly seniors and were senior males. And that's kind of weird, right? Why all these people showing up every single time? We're not getting, and we struggled. In fact, we said, we need more young people, and we really tried very hard to get young people, but young people were not interested at all. It was only seniors who were interested. They were like, and we decided to lean into it. So we said, okay, you know what? Let's not fight the wave. Let's lean into it. If seniors are just showing up without us even trying, there'll be something here that works for seniors, right? So we, with the same program, we said, you know what? Let's try and understand this active aging space, senior space, and see, how we can sort of modify our program to make it suitable for this audience, right?
Yeah.
So the repair programs became our flagship active aging approach. And in fact, today, we work very closely with the Ministry of Health and associated healthcare institutions in Singapore to figure out, how do we get elderly, and especially males, to be active and feel a sense of utility in society, so that you can, stave off problems like dementia, social isolation, and all these kind of longer healthcare issues. Because in Singapore, we have sort of a socialized healthcare system, unlike the US. So which means that many elderly, sick people means that the tax burden becomes especially high for the government. Right, so there's a great desire to try and reduce that sort of a long-term healthcare burden, right? And so they're trying to do preventive actions, right? And so active aging is seen as a very preventive sort of step. And so that sort of pivot or diversification happened at a point in time, but we only really saw, I would say, the active aging component of it about 3 to 4 years after running the repair programs, right? So we had the makerspace, we ran repair programs, we ran entrepreneurship programs, right? We also ran programs on teaching youth and adults skills, especially technical skills like how do you program an Arduino, how do you do coding and stuff like that. I think each of these things evolved and took its own direction, right? And when a particular project or a particular initiative takes a life of its own, then in our model, we spin it off as a separate company.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And the reason we spin it off as a separate company is because, look, as a small and medium enterprise, we are not the most attractive employer from a long-term career prospect, right? People will stay for 2 to 3 years and then they will leave. The best I could offer to my senior team members is that you can be a CEO of your own company.
Yeah.
A company that's part of our group instead, right? So that's the best I could offer, right? So
that's great. Actually, I
yeah.
will have a follow-up question. I do have a separate question about, I think you mentioned about this called the venture studio model. I'm very interested in that later on. Yes.
Yep. So the idea of setting up, each pivot, and when a pivot is successful and gains a life of its own, then we would, basically appoint one of our senior team members to be the CEO to lead it and grow that particular company. Of course, drawing upon the experience and the networks and connections of the parent organization, right? So we pivoted into repair. We did pivot into artificial intelligence, like I shared. We did pivots into cybersecurity, which we call digital trust. We also did pivots into semiconductor design as well, right? And this is very interesting, right? Because as you know, US and China are currently having a trade war, or at least they don't call it a trade war, some kind of a trade friction, right? And a lot of it is centered around semiconductors. But what is happening is that all the other countries watching this show, the sidelines, are thinking a particular thing. They are thinking that, oh my gosh, if for some reason someday if I either upset the US or I upset China, I might get locked out of semicon chips completely. So maybe I need to develop my own latent capacity to manufacture these things in the country, right? So they see from a national security perspective right now, right? And so we got involved in this space because a lot of them are asking us, say, hey, you guys are working with all these manufacturing semicon companies, right? Have you guys ever thought about potentially offering some kind of skilling education in a very critical national security need, right? And so when we found that there was enough traction in the space, you know what, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe it's time we set something up, specifically look at that, right? So for that particular one, we're still in the process of setting up something separately. But I'm sharing with you like how we sort of think about new opportunities and when we decide to make the shift to say that it's time to set up a new company.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense actually. See, one word comes into my mind or phrase comes into my mind is like opportunities breed opportunities, like one lead to the other. That's great. So
yeah,
thank
exactly,
you. Actually, that's fascinating. I maybe relating to your kind of early information about the journey of expansion. Could you kind of share your wisdom and experience of balancing between specialization and a diversification, because you're doing a lot of things? Do you face the challenges of this kind of a tension between specialize something versus branch out to do lots of very different things? If the challenge is there, how do you balance the two actually?
Right. So the way I tell my team is this, right? We specialize not in the product, we specialize in the customer.
Mm.
So,
what do you mean by that?
For example, when we work with a particular customer, we kind of try to figure out all the different pain points that they have and be able to be in a position to offer solutions to them. So we work with a lot of government customers, right? The government partners, and we have a good idea of the kind of issues that a ministry or a government will face, right? And so we're able to say that we need to continue to be a very useful service provider and a partner to our clients. And so let's try and solve, and firstly just try to understand, right? Understand the problems that they have, and either find partners or try to solve them directly ourselves, right? So we aim to be specialists in the problem space, not necessarily in the product, right? Because the product and the solutions can always change, but the customer doesn't change, right? The customer is still there. The customer's needs evolve, and solutions that used to work last year may not work 3 years from now, right? So when we talk about specialization over here, we really try to be specialized in the customer and the customer group and category and type.
Okay.
And we try to deepen that instead.
Thank you for watching.